Lesson 4.1 Feature Writing Knowing Your Audience. Every student journalist knows the feeling. You're supposed to write an article and you feel that deadline approaching, but you still have nothing. This lesson and the next lesson are about helping you get started. And we go over what you need to think about and how you need to think in order to come up with a great idea for an article. As a student journalist, when you set out to tell an important or interesting feature story, one of the biggest challenges is knowing what or who you should write about that will actually be important or interesting to your audience. Of course, you could just randomly pick a person or topic to write about without thinking about what will be important or interesting to your audience, but then you end up with a piece of writing that no one will read and that no one will care about, including you. Feature stories are at their best when they create empathy for people or help people connect to a big why or motivation that we share in common as human beings, or even one that engages and entertains people like a great movie or book does, with a dynamic plot, conflict, and characters. To tell these kinds of stories, we have to dig past the surface. We have to ask ourselves some important questions. First, we should ask, who is our audience? The answer to that depends on what publication you write for. For instance, if you wrote for the New York Times, a nationally read publication, your audience would be the wide net of Americans who visit their online site or pick up and read the physical New York Times, which is a paper that's available just about anywhere in the country on any given day. For student journalists working on a school publication, the primary audience are the readers of the school publication. This includes mostly other students at your school, maybe a handful of teachers, and a few very interested parents or community members. Every story you take on should be a story that your audience, your peers on campus, find interesting or important. Because of this, a student journalist has to constantly ask themselves, how can I write about something that is important and interesting to my fellow students? Of course, the easy answer is to write about high school stuff. Many student journalists settle for writing about surface things that their peers seem to care about. Fashion, music, the popular people on campus, and things like that. Those aren't bad things, but they are surface level, and they suggest that those shallow things are all that students on campus think about, worry about, or care about. A lot of adults actually believe this about teenagers too. They think that they're fairly shallow, that teenagers only think and worry about unimportant things like their clothes, gossip, drama, and what music artist has the best combination of good looks and singable songs. We both know that this isn't true about teenagers, or teenagers on this campus. If you go even a little bit past the surface with your peers, you know that they care and worry about things a lot deeper than clothes, social media drama, or their playlist. In fact, the care we do have about fashion is usually about a deep worry about fitting in, or being unique, or feeling good about oneself, or even being accepted or liked. Social media drama is really about those deep things too. Am I worthy? Am I lovable? Does anyone like me? Am I important? Am I as good as someone else? Am I better than them? Every one of those Twitter wars are whispering these questions just below the surface. And people's playlists, those songs are where many students have found some comfort in not being alone, not being the only one to want something or feel something or experience something. Those playlists are about making a statement about who we are and what we believe about the world, relationships, identity, what we value, even what way of thinking and being in the world seems to work best for us. So when we sit down to decide on a story, we have to trust that our audience will be most engaged in our story when it digs past the surface and connects with those deep things that our audience is thinking about, the things they're worrying about, or waiting to connect with them before they even know it. Beyond that, our stories always should have a local angle. A local angle means that it's a story that is about our campus and our audience. If we want to write about a topic like conflicts going on around the world, like in Syria, we wouldn't just launch into a story that covers only what's going on over there. We would have to find the local angle for the international conflict. We'd find the student who's from Syria and recently moved here as a refugee from the conflict and tell their specific story. Or we'd find someone whose parent is in the military and deployed in the Middle East, and they think that maybe they're going to have to participate in the conflict in Syria as America gets more involved. And what does that mean for their family? The process of finding a story can happen through any number of ways, but the most important thing is that a student journalist has to be observant. You have to pay attention to the world and people around you and be looking for those deep questions, worries, and stories playing out below the surface. Once you become someone looking for those things, when it comes to the brainstorming phase, you'll have a list of potential stories that all could work because they connect on the things your audience truly, deeply cares about.